We're going to do the first reading of the book. Welcome, motherfuckers. Paradise Lost. This is where it all begins, so they said. What do you mean, so they said? John Milton? So as we know, the Catholic Church doesn't necessarily like this. I apparently, back in the day when it was first made, it was like a banned book. So I don't really know how this will help us in our venture, but we'll see how it could possibly help us. We're going to read just book 1. And that's about 20, I don't know, 8 pages or so. 27? No, 25, I don't know. We're going to read book 1. The argument. So this is kind of like, this is what this chapter is about, or this book, sorry. This first book proposes, first, in brief, the whole subject, man's disobedience and the loss thereupon of paradise, wherein he was placed. Then touches the prime cause of his fall, the serpent, or rather Satan in the serpent, who revolving from God, and drawing to his side many legions of angels, was by command of God driven out of heaven with all his crew into the great deep, which action passed over. The poem hast unto the midst of things, presenting Satan with his angels now fallen into hell, described here not in the center, for heaven and earth may be supposed as not yet made, certainly not yet accursed, but in a place of utter darkness, fullest called chaos. Here Satan, with his angels, lying on the burning lake, thunderstruck and astonished, after a certain space recovers, as from confusion, calls upon him who next in order and dignity lay by him. They confer of their miserable fall. Satan awakens all his legions, who lay till then in the same manner confounded. They rise, their numbers, array of battle, their chief leader named, according to the idols known afterward in Canaan, and the countries adjoining. That's the interesting part right there. To these Satan directs his speech, comforts them with hope, yet ever gaining heaven, but tells them lastly of a new world and a new kind of creature to be created, according to an ancient prophecy or report in heaven. For that angels were long before this visible creation, was the opinion of many ancient fathers. To find out the truth of this prophecies and what to determine thereon, he refers to a full council. What his associates then attempt, pandemonium in the palace of Satan rises, suddenly built out of the deep. The infernal peers there sit in council. So this is going to get kind of tough, as we would say in the Bible. Well, they don't say that in the Bible. Yeah, they do, or Michael, or Samuel. I don't know your name. Your name might even be Charlie, as far as Jay's concerned. As far as I'm concerned. All right. You know, what's the most comfortable way of holding this? I don't know. Of man's first disobedience, and the fruit of that forbidden tree, whose moral taste brought death into the world, and all our woe, with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us, and regain the blissful seat. Sing heavenly muse, that on the secret top of Oreb, or of Sinai, didst inspire. That shepherd who first taught the chosen seed, in the beginning how the heaven and earth rose out of chaos, or of Sion hill. Delightful the more, and Siloam's brook that flowed, fast by the oracle of God. I thence invoke thy aid to my adventurous song, that with no middle flight intends to soar above the Aeonian mount, while it pursues things unattempted, yet in prose or rhyme. And chiefly thou, O Spirit, that dost prefer before all temple the upright heart and pure, instruct me, for thou knowest, thou from the first wast present, and with mighty wings outspread, dove-like, satst brooding on the vast abyss, and madest it pregnant. What in me is dark, illumine. What is low, raise and support, that to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence,
and justify the ways of God to men. Say first, for heaven hides nothing from thy view, nor deep tract of hell. Say first what cause moved our grandparents in the happy state, favored of heaven so highly, to fall off from their Creator and transgress his will. For one restraint, lords the worlds besides, whose first seduced them to that foul revolt. The infernal serpent, he was it, whose guise stirred up with envy and revenge, deceived the mother of mankind. What time his pride has cast him out from heaven, with all his host of rebel agents, by whose aid aspiring to set himself in glory above his peers, he trusted to have equals in the Most High. If he opposed, and with ambitious aim against the throne of monarchy of God, raised in pious war in heaven and battled proud, with vain attempt, him the almighty power hurled headlong, flaming from the eternal sky, with hideous ruins and combustion down, to bottomless perdition, there to dwell, in adamantine chains and penial fire, who durst defy the omnipotent to arms. 9 times the space that measures day and night, to mortal men he with his horrid crew lay vanquished, rowling in the fiery gulf, confounded though immortal. But his doom reserved him to more wrath, for now the thought both of loss, happiness, and lasting pain torments him. Round he throws his baleful eyes, that witnessed huge affliction and dismay, mixed with obdurate pride and steadfast haste. At once as far as angels keen he infuse the dismal situation waste and wild, a dungeon horrible, on all sides round, as one great furnace flamed, yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible, served only to discover sight of woe, regions of sorrow, doleful shades, where peace and rest can never dwell. Hope never comes, that comes to all, but torture without end still urges, and fiery deluge, fed with ever-burning sulfur unconsumed. Such place eternal justice had prepared for those rebellious, here their prison ordained in utter darkness, and their portion set, as far removed from God and light of heaven, as from the center thrice the utmost pole. Oh, how unlike the place from whence they fell! There the companions of his fall, overwhelmed with floods and whirlwinds of tempestuous fire, he soon discerns, and weltering by his side, one next himself in power and next in crime, long after known in Palestine and named Beelzebub, to whom the arch-enemy, and thence in heaven called Satan, with bold words breaking the horrid silence thus began. If thou be'st he, but oh how fallen, how changed from him, who in the happy realms of light, clothed with transcendent brightness, didst outshine, myriads though bright. If ye woo mutual league, united thoughts and counsel, equal hope, and hazard in the glorious enterprise, joined with me once, now misery hath joined, in equal ruin, into what pit thou seest. From what height fallen, so much the stronger proved. He with his thunder, until then who knew the force of those dire arms, yet not for those, nor what the potent victor in his rage can of ease inflict, do I repent or change. Though change in outward luster, that fixed mine in high disdain, from the sense of injured merit, that with the mightiest raised me to contend, and to the fierce contention brought along innumerable force of spirits armed, that durst disliked his reign, and me preferring his utmost power, with adverse power opposed in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. What thought the field be lost? All is not lost, the unconquerable will, a study of revenge, immortal hate, and courage never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome. That glory never shall his wrath or might extort from me, to bow and sue for grace with suppliant knee, and defy his power, from whom the terror of this arm so late, doubted his empire, that were low indeed, that were in ignominy and shame beneath this downfall, since by faith and strength of gods, and this imperial substance cannot fail. Since through experience of this great event, in arms not worse, in foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage force or guile eternal war, irreconcilable to our grand foe, who now triumphs in the excessive of joy, sole reigning holds the tyranny of heaven. So spaketh the apostle angel, though in pain, vaunting aloud, but racked with deep despair, and him thus answered soon his bold compeer: O prince, O chief of many throned powers, that led the embattled seraphin to war, under thy conduct in dreadful deeds, fearless endangered heaven's perpetual king, and put to proof his high supremacy, whether upheld by strength, or chance, or fate. Too well I see in rue dire event, that with sad overthrow and foul defeat hath lost us heaven, and all this mighty host in horrible destruction lay thus low, as far as gods in heaven excesses can perish, for the mind and spirit remains invincible, and vigor soon returns. Though all our glory extinct and happy state, here swallowed up in endless misery. But what if he our conqueror, whom I now of force believe almighty, since no less then should have overthrowed such force as ours, have left us this our spirit and strength entire, strongly to suffer and support our pains, that we may so suffer this vengeful ire, or do him mightier services as his thralls. By right of war, whate'er his business be, here in the heart of hell to work in fire, or to do his errands in gloomy deep, what can it then avail, through, yet we feel, strength undiminished, or eternal being, to undergo eternal punishment? Whereto with speedy words the arch-fiend replied, Fallen cherub, to be weak is miserable, doing or suffering, but of this be sure, to do aught good never will be our task, but ever will do ill our sole delight, as being the contrary to his high will, whom we resist. If then his providence out of our evils seek to bring forth good, our labor must be to prevent that end, and out of good still to find means of evil, which ofttimes may succeed, so as perhaps shall grieve him, if I fail not, and disturb his inmost counsel from their very destined aim. But see, the angry victor hath recalled his ministers of vengeance and pursuit back to the gates of heaven. The sulphurous hail, shot afterward us in storm, o'erblown hath laid the fiery surge that from the precept of heaven received us falling, and the thunder, winged with red lightning impetuous rage, perhaps hath spent his shafts, and ceased now to bellow through the vast and boundless deep. Let us not slip the occasion, whether scorn or satiate fury yield it from our foe. Seest thou yon dreary plain, forlorn and wild, the seat of desolation, void of light? Say what the glimmering of these livid flames casts pale and dreadful. Thither let us tend, from off the tossing of these fiery waves. There rest, if any rest can harbor there, and reassembling our afflicted powers, consult how we may henceforth most offend our enemy, our own loss how repair, how overcome this dire calamity, what reinforcement we may gain from hope, if not what resolution from despair. Thus Satan talking to his nearest mate, with head uplift above the waves, and eyes that sparkling blazed his other parts besides, prone on the flood, extending long and large, lay floating many a rood, in bulk as huge as womb the fabled names of monstrous size. Titanian, or earthborn, that warred on Jove, Briareus, or Typhon, whom the den by ancient Tarsus held, or that sea beast Leviathan, which God of all his works created hugest that swimmeth the ocean stream, him haply slumbering on the Norway foam, the pilot of some small night-foundered skiff, deeming some island off, as seamen tell, with fixed anchor in his scully rind, moors by his side under the lee, while night invests the sea, and wishes morn delays. So stretched out huge in length the arch-fiend lay, chained on the burning lake, nor ever thence has risen or heaved his head, but at the will and the high permission of all ruling heaven, led him at large to his own dark design, that with reiterated crimes he might heap on himself damnation, while he sought evils to others, and enraged might see how all his malice served but to bring forth infinite goodness, grace, and mercy shown. On man by him seduced, but on himself trembled confusion, wrath, and vengeance poured. Forthwith upright he rears from off the pool, his mighty stature, on each hand the flames, driven backward, slope their pointing spires, and rolled, and billows leave midst a horrid veil. Then with expanded wings he sears his flight, aloft, incumbent of the dusty air, that felt unusual weight, till on dry land he lights, if it were land that ever burned, with solid as lake with liquid fire, and such appeared in hue. And when the force of subterranean wind transports a hill, torn from Pelorus, or the shattered side of thundering Aetna, who combustible and fluid entrails, thence conceiving fire, sublimed with mineral fury, aid with winds, and leave a singed bottom all involved with stench and smoked. Such resting found the soul of unblessed feet. Him followed the next mate, both glorying to have scaped the Stygian flood, as gods, and by their own recovered strength, not by the sufferance of supernatural power. In this, the region, this, the soil, the clime, said then the lost archangel, this, the seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom, for that celestial light, be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right, farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equalled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields, where joy forever dwells. Hail horrors, hail infernal world, and thou profoundest hell. Receive thy new possessor, one whom brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. What matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be, but all less than he, whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. But wherefore let we then our faithful friends, the associates and co-partners of our loss, lie thus astonished on the oblivion's pool, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansion, or once more with railed arms to try what may be yet regained in heaven, or what more lost in hell. So Satan spake, and him Beelzebub thus answered, leader of those armies bright, which but the omnipotent none could have foiled, if once they heard that voice, their lively pledge of hope and fear and dangers, heard so oft, in worst extremes and on the perilous edge of battle when it raged in all assaults, their surest signal, they will soon resume new courage and revive, though now they lie groveling and prostrate on yon lake of fire. As we erewhile astounded and amazed, no wonder fallen such a pernicious height. He scarce had ceased when the superior fiend was moving towards the shore. His ponderous shield, ethereal temper, massy, large and round, behind him cast the broad circumference, hung on his shoulders like the moon, whose orb, though optic glass, the Tuscan artist views at evening from the top of Fesol, or in Valdarno to the discrete new land. Rivers or mountains in her spotty globe, his spear to equal which the tallest pine hewn on Norwegian hills, to be the mast of some great admiral, where but a wand he walked with to support uneased steps, over the burning marl, not like those steps on heaven's azure, and the torrid climes smote on him sore besides, vaulted with fire. Nathless he so endured, till on the beach of that inflamed sea he stood and called. His legions angels formed, whose lay entranced, thick as autumn leaves that strode the brooks. In Vallombrosa were the Etruscan shades, high overarched, empowered, or scattered sedge afloat, when with fierce winds Orion's armed hath vexed the Red Sea's coast, whose waves overthrew Osiris and his Memphian chivalry, while with precipitous hatred they pursued the sojourns of Goshen, who beheld from the safe shores their floating carcasses and broken chariot wheels, so thick bestrown, abject and lost lay these, covering the flood, under amazement of their hideous change. He called so loud that all the hollow deep of hell resounded. Princes, potentates, warriors, and flower of heaven, once yours, now lost, if such astonishment as this can seize eternal spirits, or have ye chosen this path after the toil of battle to repose your weary venture, for the ease you find to slumber here as in the vales of heaven? Or in this abject posture have ye sworn to adorn the conqueror, who now beholds cherub and seraph rowling in the flood, with scattered arms and ensigns, till anon his swift pursuers from heaven's gates discerned the advantage in descending tread us down, thus drooping, or with linked thunderbolts transfixed us to the bottom of this gulf. Awake, arise, or be forever fallen. They heard and were abashed, and up they sprung upon the wing, and when men wont to watch, on duty sleeping found by whom they dread, rouse and bestir themselves ere we wake, too, nor did they not perceive the evil plight in which they were, or the fiery pains not felt. Yet to their general voices they soon obeyed, innumerable, as well the potent rod of Amaram, sun in Egypt's evil day, waved round the coast, up called a pitchy cloud of locust, warping on the eastern wind, that o'er the realm of impious pharaohs hung, like night, and that darkened all the land of the Nile. So numberless were those bad angels seen, hovering on wing under the copse of hell, twixt upper, nether, and surrounding fires, till all is sigil given the uplift spear of their great sultan waving to direct their course and even balance down they light on the firm brimstone, and fill all the plain. A multitude like which the populous north poured never from their frozen loins, to pass rain or to the Danube, when her barbarous sons came like a deluge on the south and spread beneath Gibraltar to the Libyan sands. Forthwith from every squadron and each band, the heads and leaders thither has withstood their great commander, godlike shapes and forms, excelling human, princely dignities, and powers that ernst in heaven sat on thrones, though of their names and heavenly record now be no memorial, blotted out and razed by the rebellion from the books of life. Nor have they yet among the sons of Eve got them new names, till wandering o'er the earth, through God's high sufferance for the tyral of man, by falsities and lies the greatest part of mankind they corrupted to forsake God their creator and the invisible glory of him that made them to transform oft to the image of a brute adorned with gay rebellions full of pomp and gold, and devils to adorn for deities. Then were they known to men by various names, and various idols through the heathen world. Say, muse, their names then known, whose first, whose last? roused from the slumber on that fiery couch. And their great emperors called, as next in worth came singingly where he stood on the bare strand. While the promiscuous crowd stood yet aloof, the chief were those who from the pit of hell, roaming to seek their prey on earth, durst fix their seats long after next the seat of God. Their altars by his altar, gods adorned among the nations round, and durst abide Jehovah's thundering out of Sion, throned between the cherubim, yea, often placed within his sanctuary, itself their shrines. Abominations and with cursed things, his holy rites and solemn feasts profaned, and with their darkness durst affronted his light. First Moloch, horrid king, besmeared with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears, though for the noise of drums and timbrels loud, their children's cries unheard, that passed through fire to his grim idol. Him the Ammonites worship the Rabbah and her watery plain, in Argob and in Basan, to the stream of the utmost Arnon. Nor content with such audacious neighborhood, the wisest heart of Solomon he led by fraud to build his temple right against the temple of God, on that opprobrious hill, and made his grove the pleasant valley of Hinnon, Tophet thence, and black Gehenna called the type of hell. Next Shemos the obscene, dread the Moab's son, from Aor to Nebo, and the wild of southmost Arabim, in Hesebon, and Horonam, Senon's realm, beyond the flowery dale of Simma, clad with vines, and Eliel to the asphaltic pool, Peor to his other name, whence he enticed Israel and Sitaman, on their march from the Nile, to do him wanton rites, which cost them woe. Yet thence his lustful orgies he enlarged, even to that hill of scandal by the grove of Moloch's homicide, lust hard by hate, till good Josiah drove them thence to hell. With these they came, who from the bordering flood of old Euphrates to the brooks that parts Egypt from Syria's ground, had general names of Baalim and Ashtaroth, those male, these feminine, for spirits when they plead can either sex assume or both, so soft and unaccompanied is their essence pure, not teed or malaclad with joint or limb, nor founded on the brittle strength of bones, like cumbrous flesh, but in what shape they chose, dilated or condensed, bright or obscure, can execute their airy purpose, and works of love or amenity fulfill. For those a race Israel oft forsook, their living strength and unfrequent left his righteous altar, bowing lowly down to bestial gods, for with their heads as low bowed down in battle, sunk before the spear, despicable foes. With these in troop came Astoreth, whom the Phoenicians called Aster, queen of heaven, with crescent horns, to whom bright images nightly by the moon Sidonian virgins paid their vows and songs, and Sion, also not unsung, where stood her temple on the offensive mountain, built by that uxorious king, whose heart, though large, beguiled by fair idolatress, fell to idols foul. Thamus came next behind, whose annual wound in Lebanon allured the Syrian damsel to lament his fate, in amorous deities all a summer's day, while smooth Adonis from the native rock ran purple to the sea, supposed with blood. Of Thamus yearly wounded, the love-tale infected Sion's daughter with that heat, whose wanton passions in the sacred porch Ezekiel saw, when by the visions led, his eyes survey the dark idolatries of alienated Judah. Next came one with mourned in earnest, when the captive ark maimed his brute image, head and hands lopped off, in his own temple on the Grunzel's edge, where he fell flat and shamed his worshippers. Dagon his name, sea monster, upward man and downward fish, yet had his temple high, reared in Azotus, dreaded through the coast of Palestine in Gath and Ascalon. And Acheron and Gaza frontiers bound, him followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus, on the fertile banks of Abanon and Pharafar, lucid streams. He also against the house of God was behold. A leper once he lost and gained a king, Uzzah his sottish conqueror, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace from one of the Syrian mode, whereon to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. After these appeared a crew who under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train, with monstrous shapes and sorceries abutst fanatic Egypt and her priests to seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. Nor did Israel scape the infection when their borrowed god composed the calf in Oreb, and the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his maker to the grazed ox. Jehovah, who in one night when he passed from Egypt marching equaled with one stroke both her firstborn and all her bleating goats. Belial came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross love vice for itself. To him no temple stood, or altar smote, yet who more oft than he in temples and at altars, when the priests turned atheist, as did Eli's son, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. In courts and palaces he also reigned, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riots ascend above the loftiest towers, and injury and outrage, and when night darkened the streets, then wandering forth the sons of Belial, flown with the insolence and wine, witnessed the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when hospitable Doris yielded their matrons to prevent worse rape. These were the prime in order and in might. The rest were long to tell, though far renowned, the Ionian gods of Javan's issues held, gods yet confessed later than heaven and earth. Their boasted parents, Titan, heaven's firstborn with his enormous brood, and birthright series by younger Saturn. He from mightier Jove, his own, and Rhea's son like measured found. So Jove usurping reigned, these first in Crete and Ida known. Thence on the snowy top of cold Olympus ruled the middle air, their highest heaven, or on the Delphian cliff, or on the Dodona, and through all the bounds of Doric lands, or who with the Saturns old fled over Adria to the Hesperian fields, and o'er the Celtic roamed the utmost isles. All these and more came flocking, but with looks downcast and damp, yet such wherein appeared obscures some glimpse of joy to have found their chief not in despair, to have found themselves not lost, in loss itself, which on its courtents cast like doubtful hue, but he his wanton pride, soon recollecting with high words that bore a semblance of worth, not substance, gently raised their fainted courage and dispelled their fears. Then straight commands that at the warlike sound of trumpets loud and clarins be upheard. His mighty standard, that proud honor claimed, as Azazel, as his right, as cherub tall, who forthwith from the glittering staff unfurled the imperial ensign, with full height advanced, shone like a meteor streaming to the wind, with gem and golden luster rich emblazed, Sephiric arms and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sounds, at which the universal host upsent, a shout that tore hell's concave, and beyond frightened the reign of chaos and old night. All in a moment, though the gloom were seen, 10,000 banners rise into the air, with orient colors waving. With them rose a forest huge of spears and thronged helms, appeared in serrated shields and thick array, of depth immeasurable. Anon they moved, in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mood, of flutes and soft recorders, such as raised to highest of noble temper, heroes old arming to battle. And instead of rage, deliberate valor breathed firm and unmoved, with dread of death to flight or foul retreat, nor wanting power to mitigate and sway, with solemn touches, troubled thoughts, and chase anguish, and doubt and fear and sorrow and pain from mortal or immortal minds. Thus they, breathing united force with fixed thought, moved on in silence to soft pipes that charmed their painful steps o'er the burnt soils. And now advance in view they stand, a horrid front of dreadful length and dazzling arms, in guise of warriors old with ordered spears and shields, awaiting what commander their mighty chief had to impose. He through the armed files darts his experienced eyes, and soon traverse the whole battalion's view, their order due. Their visage and stature as of gods, their number less he sums, and now his heart distends with pride, and hardened in his strength, glories for never since created man. Met such embodied force is named with these, could merit more than they that small infantry, warred on by cranes, through all the giants' broods of Phlegra, and the heroic race were joined, that fought the Thebes and Elam on each side, mixed with auxiliary gods, and what resounds in fable or romance of Uther's son, begrit with British and Amoric knights, and all who since, baptized or infidel, jousted in Aspremont and Montalban, Damasco or Morocco, or Tresibon, or whom's Bistura, sent from Alfric shore, when Charlemagne with all his peerage fell by Fontarabia. Thus far these beyond compare of mortal prowess, yet observe their dread commander. He above the rest, in shape and gesture proudly eminent, stood like a tower, his form had yet not lost all her original brightness, nor appeared less than archangel ruined, and the excess of glory obscured, as when the sun's new risen looks through the horizontal mist, and the misty air shorn of his beams, from behind the moon in dim eclipse disastrous twilight shed on half the nations, and with fear of change, perplexed monarchs, darkened so, yet shone above them all the archangel. But his face deep scars of thunder had entrenched, and care sat on his faded cheek, but under brows of dauntless courage and considerate pride, waiting revenge, cruel his eyes, but cast signs of remorse and passion to behold. The fellows of his crime, the followers rather, far other once beheld in bliss, condemned forever now to have their lot in pain. Millions of spirits for his fault immerect, of heaven and from eternal splendor flung, for his revolt, yet faithful how they stood, their glory withered. And when heaven's fire has scathed the forest oaks or mountain pines, with sighing tops their stately growth, though bare, stands on the blasted heath. He now prepared to speak, were at their doubled ranks then beyond. Then bending wings from wing, and half enclosed him round, with all his peers, attention held them mute. Thrice he essayed, and thrice in spite of scorn, tears such as angels weep burst forth. At last, words interwoven with sighs found out their way. O myriads of immortal spirits! O powers matchless, but with the Almighty, and that strife was not inglorious, though the event was dire, as this place testifies, and as this dire change hateful to utter. But what power of mind foreseeing or presage, from the depth of knowledge past or present, could have feared? How such united force of gods, how such as stood like these, could ever know repulse? For who can yet believe, though after loss, that all these pursuant legions, whose exile hath emptied heaven, shall fail to reascend, self-raise, and repose their native seats? For me be witness all the host of heaven, if counsels different or danger shunned, by me have lost our hopes. But he who reigns monarch in heaven, till then as one secure sat on his throne, uphill by old repute, consent, or custom, and his regal state put forth at full, but still his strength concealed, which tempted our attempt and wrought our fall. Henceforth his might we know, and know our own, so as not either to provoke or dread new war provoked. Our better part remains, to work in close design by fraud or guile, what force affected not, that he no less at length from us may find, who's overcome by force hath overcome by half his foe. Space may produce new worlds, whereof so rife, there went a fame in heaven that ere long intend to create, and therein plant, a generation whom his choice regards, should favor equal to the sons of heaven. Thither, if but to pyre, shall be perhaps our full eruption, thither or elsewise, for this infernal pit shall never hold celestial spirits in bondage, nor the abyss long under darkness cover. But these thoughts full counsel must mature. Peace is despaired, for whom can think submission? War then, war open or understood must be resolved. He spake, And to confirm his words out flew millions of flaming swords drawn from the thighs of mighty cherubim. The sudden blaze far round illumined hell, highly they raged, against the highest, and fierce with grasped arms, clashed on their sounding shields the din of war, hurling defiance towards the vault of heaven. There stood a hill not far whose greasy top belched fire and rolling smoke. The rest entire shone with the glossy scurf, undoubted sign that in his womb was hid metallic ore, the work of sulphur. Thither winged with speed, a numerous brigade hastened, as when bands of pioneers with spade and pickaxe armed, forerun the royal camp to trench a field, or cast a rampart. Mammon led them on, Mammon, the least erect spirit that fell from heaven, for even in heavens his looks and thoughts were always downward bent, admiring more the riches of heaven's pavement, trodden gold, than aught divine or holy else enjoyed, in vision beatific by him first. Men also, and by his suggestion taught, ransacked the center, and with impious hands rifled the bowels of their mother earth, for treasures better hid. Soon had his crew opened into the hill a spacious wound, and digged out ribs of gold. Let none admire that riches grow in hell, that soil may be best deserve the pretentious bane. And here let those who boast the mortal things and wonderings tell of Babel and the works of Memphian kings. Learn how their greatest monuments of fame and strength and art are easily outdone by spirits retrobate, and in an hour what in an age they with incessant toil and hands innumerable scarce perform. Nigh on the plain in many cells prepared, that underneath had veins of liquid fire, suckled from the lake, a second multitude with wondrous art founded the massive ore, severing each kind, and succumbed the bullion's dross. A third as soon had formed within the ground a various mold, and from the boiling cells by strange conveyance filled each hollow nook, as in an organ from one blast of wind. Too many a row of pipes the soundboard breathes. Anon out to the earth a fabric hue rose like an exaltation, with the sound of dulcet symphonies and voices sweet, built like a temple, where pilaster round were set and Doric pillars overlaid, with golden architrave, nor did they want cornice or frieze. With bossy sculptures graven, the roof was fretted gold, not Babylon, nor great Alcario, such magnificence equaled in all their glories. To enshrine Belus or Seraphis their gods, or seat their kings, where Egypt with Assyria strove. In wealth and luxuries the ascending pile stood fixed her stately height, and straight the doors, opening their blazoned founts, discovered wide. Within her ample spaces, o'er the smooth and level pavement, from the arched roofs, pendant by subtle magic, many a row of starry lamps and blazing crescents fed, with naphtha and asphaltus yielded light, and from a sky the hasty multitude admiring entered, and the work some praised, and some the architect his hand was known in heaven by many a towered structured high, where spectres angels held their residence, and sat as princes whom the supreme king exalted to such power and gave to rule, each in his hierarchical, the orders bright. Nor was his name unheard or unadorned in ancient Greece, and in Ausonian land men called him Mulciber. Now he fell from heaven, they fabled, thrown by an angry Jove, sheer over the crystal battlements. From the morn to noon he fell, from noon to dewy eve, and with summer's day and with the setting sun dropped from the zenith like a falling star. On Lemnos, the Aegean isle, thus they related, erring, for he with his rebellious rout fell long before, nor aught availed him now, but to have built in heaven's high towers. Nor did he scape by all his engines, but was headlong sent with illustrious crew to build in hell. Meanwhile the winged heralds by command of sovereign powers with awful ceremony, and trumpets sound throughout the hosts proclaim a solemn council forthwith to be held at Pandemonium, the high capital of Satan and his peers. Their summons called for every band and squattered regiment, by place or choice, the worthiest they anon. With hundreds and with thousands trooping came, attended, all access with throngs, the gates, and porches wide, but chief the spacious hall, though like a covered field, were champions bold, wont to ride in armed, and at the Soldane's chair, defied the best of Panem chivalry, to mortal combat or career with lance, thick swarms both on the ground and in the air, brushed with the hiss of rustling wings, as bees in springtime, when the sun with Tartarus rides, pour forth their populous youth above the hive, in clusters, they among fresh dews and flowers, fly to and fro, or on a smooth plank, the suburb of their straw-built citadel, new rubbed with balm, expatiate and confer their state affairs. So thick the airy crowd swarmed and were strained, till the signal given, behold a wonder! They but now who seed in bigness to surpass earth's giant sons, now less than smallest dwarfs, in narrow room, throng numberless, like that Pygmean race beyond the Indian mount, or fairies, elves, whose midnight revelries by a forest side or fountain some belated peasant sees, or dreams he sees, while overhead the moon sits arbitress, and near to the earth wheels her pale course, they on their mirth and dance intent, with joyous music charm his ears. At once with joy and fear his heart rebounds, thus incorporeal spirits to the smallest forms, reduce their shapes immense, and were at large, though without number still amidst the hall of that infernal court, but far within, and with their dimensions like themselves, the great seraphic lords and cherubim in close recesses and secret conclaves sat, 1,000 demigods on golden seats, frequent and full, after short silence then, and summons read, the great council begin. That was tough. That was really tough to fucking read. Oh my god. Very fucking irritating. But what are the things that kind of stood out to me? One, poetry is interesting. Now, keep in mind, it was written where it's like, there was no like, this is how you spell this word, this is how you spell that one, this is how you spell, like, because there were so many words in here that I had a real hard time with, so it really slowed me down. Other than that, as I was reading it, there was a lot of homages to certain things that sparked my mind a bit. And so the main thing that we really want to investigate are, throughout the text, there were a lot of italics words of certain angels and certain places, and like for instance, Orab, Egypt, Bethel, Sidonian, Thamus, I don't know, Aster, Ionian, Saturn, Jove, Ida, Olympus, Dodona, places and peoples. So the first thing I want to do in the next video is let's gather all those words and understand their context. So we'll go like in order of how it was in the book. So whatever words were italicized, we'll just put them on the screen, we'll talk about it a bit, we'll read into it, then we'll move on to the next words. There's quite a lot of them. Quite a bit of a hell of a lot. Second thing is, just like we said in the previous video, I think it's a good idea that we go a little bit deeper into who John Milton was, and what his views might have been about, if they are indeed known anywhere else, Catholicism. And from that point, I want to look at the world that he was living in, because the 1600s, man, there's something about those times. It's like right before this mass reform. You think of what happened to the colonies in America, you know, when it comes to them seceding from the British and becoming their own nation. Then shortly after that, you have the French Revolution. So there's a strange flux going on. I think it's what it said in the last video, around this time, where it was like time was going like this, and then from here something happened. So we're at the crux of it. So is this a symbolizing thing of a time to come? A book that was written that would symbolize a new age, and that new age is void of true religion. And you know, I want to get into that. So John Milton, we'll look into him, we'll look into the time that he lived in, and we'll look into see why did he write the stuff that he wrote. That's the main goal here.
Whether I'm going to answer those questions, I'm not sure, but let's just go from there and then we'll see. We'll see what happens. So in the next video, we'll answer some questions.
And scath the forest's oath, or mountain pines with sign tops. Oh, fucking hell. I don't even know where to go from here. This is so fucking stupid. All right. Oh, man. Okay. It's going to give me a minute. Woo. All right. Oh, man. Okay. What did I say? Pains. All right. Come on, man. We got to do it. Okay. I hope to God I'm going to edit this right. All right. I tried to power through it, but I knew it was fucking stupid. All right. Hath scanned in the forest's oak or mountain pines. With Come on, let's do this. I'm going to say skate the forest. I don't fucking know. Take 2.